thank you for the opportunity to stand in front of you for this message. Again, I'd like to thank Reverend Vladimir for taking over the ship next week, and we'll look forward to his leadership and keeping our prayers. The last two songs, Angela and Andy's, really fits this theme of this passage. Before I read the passage, let me give you a little background. When Paul was in prison, you got to remember, Paul was frail, he was probably underfed, beaten. He wrote this letter to the church of Philippi, and it's probably one of the most personal letters that he wrote. And his message was, despite the conditions, he was content. Okay? So as we read this passage, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. So Paul really believed in having Christ in his heart to give him strength to take on any circumstances. So a friend of mine gave me this passage, and I got to think about the word contentment. Okay? So I had lunch with my daughter, and we got into this big hoorah discussion about what contentment meant. And I decided, everybody kind of maybe defines that differently, but I define it as simply an inner peace. But surprisingly, the Bible defines it as self-sufficiency, which is a little quirky if you think about the term self-sufficiency. And then Karen and I got talking about, can you be happy, and do you have to be happy to be content? Do you have to be happy to be content? So we're going to look at happiness from a biblical standpoint here shortly. Can you have sad days and be content? Okay? Those are some questions you can just ponder this week. But I turned 65 this past February. And I think most people that turn 65 ponder some questions. I think they stop and say, hey, what's my life been? Where am I at now? I just think that's natural. I've talked to several people who are 65, and they kind of did that. We're on the cusp of our retirement. We're on the latter part of our lives. So far, some of you that are not 65, guess what? The day will come. Faye, your day's coming. I got my Medicare card last week, and my hand was shaking. I thought I'd never get a Medicare card. So it does happen. And if you're over 65, you're probably saying, I wish I was 65 again. Anyway, at 65, I think we ask some simple questions. Am I the person that I want to be? Am I the person that I want to be? Am I living my faith? Thank you. Am I happy? Am I content? When I ask myself those questions, why didn't I ask those questions at 25, 35, 45, 55, all those key times we get birthdays? What are we doing at those ages? We're busy doing what? Raising families, working, building our box. We don't have time to ask ourselves. But we should. We should. So I want you to take a little helicopter ride above you. You're in a helicopter looking down on you. And ask yourself, are you content? Yes, you've had some ups and downs and bad times and good times, but the net effect, are you content and happy? Okay? That's what Paul was, despite everything. Here is something, I never read this in the Bible, didn't know it was in there, but it is. In chapter 4, Philippians. Christians are to consciously think on the positive dimensions of life. So we're charged by God to make our lives positive. It's a biblical charge. You remember the song in the 90s, Don't Worry, Be Happy? You didn't know that was a Christian song, did you? God wrote it. If you haven't heard it, if you're young, you haven't heard it, look it up on YouTube. You don't worry, be happy. So it's biblical. So Paul takes that concept of being happy and moves on to say to the church, to be Christ-like, I want you to model after me. So he was a role model. He said in chapter 3, be noble. That means being dignified, worthy, have integrity. Do right. Simply conform to Christ's teachings. Be pure, moral. Be lovely. Promote peace, not conflict. And be admirable, which is to be positive. This is what Paul's contentment was all about. As long as he lived a Christ-like life, he had those attributes, and he knew he could fall on Christ for strength to endure anything. And I think we're all envious of that. Again, those last two songs, the words were just right on. So, let's look at the word happiness. Now, I found this interesting, to look up biblically what happiness means. And I'm sure everyone in this room has their own definition, but let's look at what the Bible tells us. It's a deep inner strength. Happiness is a deep inner strength made up of courage, faith, hope, and peace. Happiness is having the courage to face adversity. Happiness is having faith that God will have the final say in your life and it will be good. That's real comforting. I find that very comforting. Having faith, the dark clouds will pass, like today, and the sun will shine. And happiness is knowing you've been merciful to friend and foe. And last but not least, happiness is realizing that this is not our final destination. This is we're on a standby here, okay? So let me ask you an earthly question. How can you be happy and content if you have 24/7 chronic pain? Where you get up in the morning, you can't even get out of bed, go to the toilet, or go to the kitchen table, make coffee. It hurts every moment of the day. And I see patients, my wife, nurse wife, every day we have patients that struggle with chronic illness, breathing, aches and pains, all right? How can you be happy when you have clinical depression? By the way, if you have clinical depression, which is no different than high blood pressure, it's a disease, your brain's not going to allow you to have these chemicals to allow you to be content. What if you have high anxiety, a tremendous amount of anxiety, or you live check to check, financial burden, or your family has drama, crisis? How do you deal with that and be happy? Paul would say, through Christ, Christ will give you strength. I don't think it's that easy. None of us are Pauls, right? I just don't think we can face adversity and chronic pain, etc. easily. I think the biggest challenge we face is to look at our faith to fix this. I think it's okay to self-doubt. I think it's okay to have I think Christians can self-doubt themselves. I think that's healthy, actually. So you rely on what? Prayer and self-reflection. Remember, people, well, you use prayer, that's not enough. It's not enough. You have to self-reflect. And maybe through self-reflection, God's strength is working through you. So maybe I can find the right person to treat that depression. Maybe I can go to the right pain clinic and get it under control. Change my diet. Maybe I can fix the problem in my family. Maybe I can get financial counseling, get out of underneath debt. Maybe that's the strength Paul's talking about. But I don't think prayer is enough. I think you have to self-reflect. So, back to being content. I'm, again, 65. I've been in a job for 45 years I truly enjoy. I got the best wife God put on earth. I'm content with my family, my friends, my hobbies. So how did I get that way? I'm not saying it's been easy. I don't have a problem-free life at all, okay? How did I get there? Well, I kind of reflected on some lessons I learned throughout my life that has got me here. And maybe you can have these fit here. One is I realized I needed people through my whole life. I could not do this alone. I need people that give me some advice, feedback. I needed to fail. And a good spouse will let you know when you fail and give you what you need to hear. A lot of people won't. Very few people come into my office and say, Dennis, to my face, trust me, behind my back, they may talk a little bit, but we don't get good, strong feedback, but our spouse can give it to us, or family. You need to recognize your weaknesses. The second thing I learned was during difficult times, the clouds did dissipate and the sun showed up. And I learned from that, but more importantly, I moved on. I don't have a lot of regrets. I don't sit there and look back in the past and have a lot of regrets. I think you could have contentment with a lot of regrets. Remain calm during difficult times. Not always, but try. But weather those storms with the appropriate emotion. That's really important. Now, what that emotion is, it's up to you, but an appropriate emotion and falling back on my faith. And then the golden rule is to treat others as we want to be treated. That sounds good on paper, but every interaction I have with someone, I don't stop and think, am I treating that person like I want to be treated? We don't have time for that. Our brains would get exhausted. So overall, you try your best to be the best person and treat everybody. But how can you treat someone good when they mistreat you? That's where inner strength comes from. So you have to be kind of self-aware of your just treating other people. Fifth, or allowing faith to flow through me, where at the same time searching for ways to be positive. I have been lucky that I look at things relatively optimistic. And I think that's just from my childhood on up. I was fortunate. But you have to look for ways and pray about it to be positive. Help bridge other people to have harmony. We took this inventory of leadership traits a while back. It's called Strength Finders. And one of my strengths is harmony. And not make people get along at the compromise of my values, just that in my position, I have to bring a lot of people together to see each other, occasional conflict with students or faculty. To build harmony is, and you get content as a leader when you have developed harmony in your workplace. Choose to be positive. Again, my daughter and I didn't agree on this about it's a choice to be happy. We had a long discussion. But I believe it is. It's a choice we make to be happy. It's a choice we make not to be happy, I think. But the self-reflection kind of helps identify that. And last but not least, being optimistic despite some self-doubt from time to time. So I bid you, go this week and reflect. Stop and think about how happy you are and how much contentment you have. And if it's lacking, fix it. And the only way you're going to fix it is prayer and self-reflection. You've got to be aware. And take those steps to strengthen your faith, just like Paul has in his walk of faith. So with that, let's now bless the communion table. Heavenly Father, we gather this morning to partake in communion. And as every week, this table brings us the time to have a moment of prayer with you. We take the bread and wine and realize you sacrificed your life for us. But bless all of us that come to this table. Bestow upon your grace and love. In the most holy name we pray. Amen.